Breaking Bad was never actually about drugs? What if the whole time you were watching a man grieve and no one told you? Because here's the thing, every scene you thought was about power, money, or survival was actually about something much darker. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Breaking Bad ran for 5 seasons. 52 million people watched the finale. Critics called it the greatest TV drama ever made, and they weren't wrong. But here's the problem. Most people watched it as a crime story. They watched Walter White cook meth, build an empire, and destroy everything around him. What they missed was the psychological horror running underneath every single scene. Today, we're going back into Albuquerque, not to watch Walter White win, but to watch Walter White fall apart. And we're going to catch the exact moments the show's creators hid in plain sight. So, are you ready to feel uncomfortable about your favorite show? Walter White is a chemistry teacher. He's 50 years old. He drives a beat-up Pontiac Aztek. He works a second job at a car wash. He has a pregnant wife, a teenage son with cerebral palsy, and a mortgage he can barely pay. And then, in a routine doctor's visit, he's told he has inoperable lung cancer. On paper, this is the inciting incident, the moment that starts the story. But here's the problem. Walter White doesn't react like a man who just received a death sentence. He reacts like a man who already knew. Watch his face in that scene. There's no shock, no disbelief. There's something much quieter, almost relief. This leads to one of the show's most overlooked ideas. Walter White wasn't broken by the cancer. He was broken before it. The cancer just gave him permission to stop pretending. This is important because every choice Walt makes in the series, the lies, the manipulation, the violence, starts making a different kind of sense. He isn't a good man corrupted by circumstance. He's a man who always had this inside him, finally given a reason to let it out. What if the cancer was the best thing that ever happened to Walt? Not because it saved him, but because it freed him. But the cancer wasn't even the most revealing moment in Season 1. Season 3, Episode 10, Fly. Walt and Jesse are trapped in the super lab for an entire episode trying to kill a single fly. No drug deal, no cartel, no gusfring. Fans at the time were furious. They called it filler, the most hated episode of the series. But here's the problem. It's the most important episode of the entire show. What happens next is extraordinary. Walt, exhausted and sleep-deprived, starts rambling. And in that rambling, something slips out. He talks about the night Jane died. He was at a bar. He sat next to her father, Donald Margolis, without knowing who he was. They had a conversation. Walt went home, and hours later, in Jesse's apartment, Walt watched Jane choke to death on her own vomit. And he did nothing. In the lab, alone, Walt says, "I've got so much to do, and I'm not sure how much time I have left." This is important because the fly isn't a contaminant. The fly is guilt. The entire episode is Walt's subconscious eating him alive. He can't sleep. He can't focus. He's obsessing over something tiny because the thing he actually did, letting a person die, is too enormous to look at directly. The writers called it a bottle episode, but it was actually a confessional hidden inside a comedy about pest control. What if Breaking Bad told you exactly who Walter White was in Season 3, and you were so bored by The Fly that you missed it completely? And yet, The Fly episode isn't even where Walt's real mask slips. Season 4. The scene everyone quotes. Skylar is afraid. She tells Walt that she's scared of the people he's working for, that danger is coming to their door. And Walt turns to her and delivers one of the most iconic speeches in TV history. "I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot. And you think that of me? No, I am the one who knocks." The internet went wild. T-shirts were made. The clip has tens of millions of views. But here's the problem. Everyone quoted it as a badass moment, a power move, a statement of dominance. No one noticed it was a cry for help. Here's what's actually happening in that scene. Walt is trying to convince Skylar. But look at his body language. Listen to his voice crack on, "I am the danger." He's not threatening her. He's begging her to believe the story he's telling himself. Because just episodes earlier, Walt was hiding in a crawl space, laughing and sobbing uncontrollably while his wife tried to send him away. He was falling apart. This is important because the show's greatest trick was making the audience see Walt the way Walt sees himself. Powerful, in control, the danger. But the writers were always showing you something else. A frightened man, a mediocre man, a man who needed to be feared because somewhere inside, he was terrified. What if you were the one who got played? What if the most famous monologue in the show was designed to fool you, the viewer, just as much as Skylar? But even that pales in comparison to the single most devastating scene in the entire series. Series finale. Walt has lost everything. His empire is gone. His family hates him. He's dying. He finds Skylar living in a small apartment, poor, broken, her last name dragged through the mud. He could lie. He's been lying for years. It would be so easy. But instead, Walt says the truest thing he has ever said in 5 seasons. "I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. And I was alive. No empire, no money, no justification. Just a man, at the end of his life, finally telling the truth." This is important because the entire show had been building to this single admission. Every lie Walt told, "I'm doing this for my family," was a story he needed to believe. But in that moment, in that apartment, with nothing left to protect, the story collapsed. And what was underneath it wasn't a monster. It wasn't a drug lord. It was just a man who, for one brief window of time, finally felt like himself. What if Breaking Bad isn't a tragedy about a good man becoming evil? What if it's a tragedy about a man who was never allowed to be himself and chose the most destructive possible way to finally feel real? So here's what Breaking Bad was actually about. Not meth, not money, not Heisenberg. It was about a man suffocating inside a life that never fit him and the catastrophic, irreversible way he chose to escape it. The fly was guilt. The knocking speech was denial. The finale was confession. And every scene you thought was about crime was actually about grief, ego, and the terrifying question, what would you do if you stopped caring about consequences? That's why Breaking Bad doesn't let you feel clean at the end. Because somewhere in some quiet, uncomfortable part of yourself, you understood Walt. And that's the most unsettling thing the show ever did.